Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on a very interesting reel, and this one was sent in by Scott. Scott has done a lot of finds at West Coast fishing flea markets and the like. This one's very unusual. This is a Penn reel. It's a Penn Seaford. Let's see if we can bring that up nice and close. And Seaford is one of the named reels that they had, and well, most of those were pre-war. I'm trying to figure out if this is a wooden handle. It should be, but a pre-war is also one of these cross hatches on the click bar. This one also has what I believe is the addition of two cork rings that are used as spacers so that you don't put more line on than you need to, because at the time, well, line was relatively expensive, and if you put the filler in, that might take up 100 yards worth of line that would rarely be used on a reel of this kind. This reel is a direct drive reel, so when you're cranking away, you do not have the benefit of a star adjuster or a drag system, which means you fight it on the way back. That's how you would fight your fish. And you also apply some pressure with this, which is a leather thumb brake. You do that for casting purposes, and you could also use pressure like that in fighting the reel to try and hold the fish, particularly if you were bringing it on board or the like. Well, we're going to take this reel apart. We'll show you how to service it, what goes on inside this reel. Again, pretty much a pre-war Penn fishing reel, courtesy of Scott. And if you like these types of videos, if you want to see more, if you like learning about reels like this one, then I would ask you to subscribe to my channel. And if you do subscribe to my channel, please use the notification button. That'll let you know when I'm posting, and you'll be able to see if it's a video that you would like to watch. I work on all kinds of reels, and essentially you're looking at the reels that come into my shop. So in this case, we're looking at an 80-year-old reel or more, and tomorrow it might be the most current Shimano reel or the like. Well, we're going to start by taking off the pieces and parts. You saw me do a little bit of a spray of some penetrating oil on the heads of those screws. Hopefully those will come out okay. And we're going to take off the handle first. Now, most of the time I like to encourage to clean the corrosion or the patina, if you will, off of a reel when you're servicing it. But this reel, because of its collectability and because of the age of this reel, I'm going to leave it on there. So don't think I'm skipping a step here because I didn't do that. It's by choice. Now, one of the things I did note is that this handle is very bent. I don't know how it got bent like that, but we will straighten that out. We'll use a vise to do that, and that's not going anywhere in that regard in terms of pluses or minuses to collectability. Well, let's see if we can get these screws out. I always worry on something like this because if you snap a piece, well, they're very difficult to get replacements for, particularly if you broke, say, a side plate on one of these. That'd be almost impossible to find the side plate for it. Alright, we only got one more that we need to loosen. I like to loosen them all before I take any of them out, just to make sure that we're not going to deal with that as an issue. When I take these out, I'm going to lay these on my desk here. That way I'm going to make sure that I know what the size of the screws are. There should be 4 long screws and 2 short screws. The long screws would go inside the crossbar. The shorter screws would go in the reel seat. And that's something Penn has done from the beginning. A lot of reel manufacturers have done that. That's because the long screws, if you use them in the reel seat here, well, they would just protrude through the other side and you risk catching line on them. But this looks like it follows the traditional practice here. Okay, so there's all 6 screws are out. The 2 screws that are in the reel seat are shorter indeed. And what I'm doing here, when I take my pieces and parts off, they go into a parts tray. The parts tray helps keep track of them later. Well, we got a bunch of grease in here. In all honesty, that grease has probably done this reel a favor in that the reel is protected. I don't see a lot of rust or or anything like that here. I'll just clean up some of the inside. Again, I would normally run a cleaner. I'm going to leave this just as it is because of the collectability of the reel, and well, it kind of tells a story. Now, cleaning, greasing that up, well, that's another story. You certainly can maintain your reels from a collectability standpoint, and we're not doing anything unusual here other than making sure that they're cleaned. All right, with that spool clean, we'll put that off to the side. I'm going to turn the camera off for a moment here, and I'm going to go straighten out that handle before I put that anywhere. And one of the things you're going to note is that this reel follows pretty much the pattern of the Penn reels all the way through the 1990s into the 2000s in terms of how it's constructed with the bridge, the pinion gear, the jack, and the yoke, and the springs and the like. All right, I'm going to turn that off for a moment. We'll go straighten this handle out. We'll be right back in video time. Well, it was a couple of minutes, but video time is only a couple of seconds. You see how much straighter that is as a result. We'll put that into my parts tray. This is a big enough assembly that we can leave it to itself. And we're going to remove the 4 screws. And while I do that, I want to encourage you to ask questions if you have them. And it doesn't have to be on this reel. It doesn't even have to be on this kind of genre of reel. Maybe you're working on something and you're stuck. Maybe you're thinking about buying a modern reel and want my opinion. Maybe you just want to know a little bit more about the Penn reels or its competitors or whatever. Leave that in the comments section. I will try to answer those questions for you, and hopefully you'll come away educated and be able to do these things yourself. That's what this channel is about, teaching you how to do the reel service and repair yourself so that you can keep the reels fishing and give them a second chance. All right, with those 4 screws out, that bridge plate is going to come down now. I was looking for an anti-reverse dog, but one doesn't exist on this reel. We do have a lot of grease and the like. Kind of have a stuck screw here, but it did turn enough. There we go, push it out that way. Those 4 screws are different. There's threaded screws on the bottom, and there's partially threaded screws on the top. That's kind of consistent with all of Penn's manufacture. We're going to remove the jack now. Remove the yoke and the pinion gear, and there's 2 springs that are the yoke springs that go underneath. Well, I'm not sure what the type of grease was that they used when they serviced this reel, but it certainly is pretty thick, and it certainly hasn't been serviced in a while. So I'm going to use the penetrating oil now. I'm just going to flood that assembly. We're going to use that as a degreaser. Let's see if we can't pull this whole thing up right now. Well, this is kind of interesting. I'm not seeing a pin, nor am I seeing a way around that. I thought maybe this would be a cap, but it's not a cap, as best I can tell. And I don't see a pin, but somehow it's got to be on there. So I'm not sure if this one was pressed on or not. And because of the age of the reel, we're just going to do a cleanup on the reel itself. There are no drag washers in here. It's a single gear setup. And I'm a little curious about the attach point, but I'm not going to risk doing something that may become troublesome later. So I'm just using a pick to slide out from behind to get that heavy grease load that I saw there. That'll help the performance of this reel. And once we get all of that out, we'll go ahead and do the rest. The side plate and the like. Well, there's a lot of grease on this towel. There's a lot of oils and the like. I'm just going to remove the towel. Go switch that out. Let's do a quick inspection there. Yep, all the grease from behind is gone. And now I'm looking at the teeth. The teeth are relatively empty. Here's one or two spots that look like they have some grease on there, so I'm going to take a hard bristle brush and pull that through. I'm going to see if I can even find the schematic for this. Mystic Parts is pretty good about it. But right now this all looks like one piece assembly that somehow is pinned or pressed on there. Not sure what it is. This does not have the traditional gear sleeve that it rides on underneath. So, a little curious about that. Alright, let's take the gear side plate then. Going to grab a cotton swab. We'll run all the tracks here. Get that old grease out. We saw that it was just loaded with old grease. Tons of old grease. And again, in this one, it probably wasn't to its detriment. It probably helped keep it from corrosion or breaking or whatever. And it wasn't uncommon for old timers to do just this, overload a reel with grease as a waterproofing agent, as a way to keep the salt water out in that. The problem that you have with that is, well, when you're done fishing, if you don't pay attention to it, if you don't clean it up on a regular basis, it just congeals and varnishes, and this becomes a problem where you're trying to avoid a problem. A little bit of cotton sticking here. The back end of that bushing that comes through the case has got a few points on it. I guess it must have been grabbing that. All right, that looks pretty clean now. One more pass, and we can put this back together in a moment. Let's take our pinion gear. We got the same issue here. On the yoke, we got a lot of old dried grease. We're going to wipe that off as best we can. If you needed the assist, you could use the penetrating oil on that. Same thing here. We're going to pull the bristle brush through, make sure we clean out all the channels on the pinion gear, and we'll do one final mop up here. And now you see why I wear this glove when I can. I don't like exposing my hand too much to all the stuff that I'm not quite sure what it is. And this stuff, well, I'm certainly not sure what this is at all. But if I could get one on the other hand and make it work for me, I probably would. But right now I just have issues with dealing with small pieces and parts in a gloved hand. Alright, that took care of that one pretty quick, didn't it? Let's go for the reassembly then. So much of servicing a reel is nothing more than keeping the reel clean. So cleaning it, inspecting the pieces and parts, and then putting it back together again with new lubrication. We're going to start by lubricating that side plate bearing where the spool is going to ride. We'll do the same thing. We'll put some grease onto the shoulders of the yoke. We've inspected that pinion gear, so let's go ahead and get a good amount of grease into the pinion gear. And even though this may look like a lot of grease at the moment, it's nothing compared to what just came out of the reel. And we'll put grease onto the main gear as well. So there is no anti-reverse dog in this reel, which is kind of interesting as to why you have a free spool release, but we do. I guess that will keep the spool turning free. It'll pull the pinion gear out so the handle won't back turn on you. All right, let's take the two springs. They go in the cavities. These are where those partially threaded bridge screws are going to come through on the other side. Put that in. And we've got the yoke. We'll center that on the bearing and center that over the springs. Press in and bring the yoke over so that it rides with the stud here and the hook on the eccentric. And then there's nothing to set here, so we'll just simply line this up and bring it in. Make sure that the pinion gear clears. And then we can take those four springs. Springs is four screws, not springs. The two of them have the partial threads on them. I'll wipe these off with the old grease. And two of them have the full threads. As noted, the partially threaded ones, this type, go top so that it doesn't get caught up in the spring. And when I do these, those of you that watch the videos pretty much know I like to use an up and down pattern. Well, I guess the first thing I did was mess up there. I thought I was on the top. I wasn't. So I'm going to have to remove that screw. That's okay. Take your time. Be patient. Good thing as a practice would be to make sure you take pictures along the way. Because if you find yourself kind of stuck, there we go. I'm having trouble lining that hole up there. So if you find yourself stuck, go back and reference your pictures. That will help you reestablish the orientation, the sequence, and the like of where that part belongs, where you took it out of, and when you took it out, and so on. So use your digital camera, use your cell phone, use whatever you're comfortable with. Of course, I'm taking videos here, so I've got a running picture, and I know these videos help a lot of folks, so we do it that way. All right, the two with the partial threads are up top. This is the fourth and final of the screws, and then we'll tighten them all down. And we're just about to the point now where this reel is completely serviced, because as we mentioned, we didn't have a anti-reverse dog or anything to load in, so we don't have a star drag. Put a little bit of grease on the front of that jack so that as it slides underneath the bridge, it works properly. Let's take our spool, a little bit of grease onto both sides of the spool. I want to get a little bit of grease into the non-handle side bearing there, and then we can go ahead and put the spool back on, the side plate back on. Now we can go to our parts tray and get the 6 screws that belong in the side plate. Now, as we mentioned, we got 2 long ones on both sides with the crossbars, and 2 short ones which are in the reel seat. Just pick one to start, and again, do the same thing here that you did with the bridge. Start on the one side, kind of do an X pattern. So we'll come over to the other side here. Do the second. Take one of the short screws for the bottom now for the reel seat. And what you're doing here is you're spreading the stress of that side plate out. So you're keeping it even, and well, you're not torquing it out of sequence or anything. Once you did that, we can go repeat again. We'll come back up top on the one side, take the bottom one on the other side, finish with the reel seat screw, and well, you're done. So if you want to keep this leather thumb bar together, you can use some saddle soap or some other leather treating product. You can actually put a little bit of oil on there if you like. I don't like to oil them because the smell of the oil stays with it. But if you wanted to, you should keep that fresh so that it doesn't crack and split and break off. They used to be a very common accessory, now not so much. Kind of hard to find. All right, one final, just tighten them all down, make sure that you've got them nice and tight. All we have to do is install the handle, give it a test to see how we did, and get this one back to Scott. So Scott was telling me, he's out in Southern California, he was telling me that there's some clubs out there that, well, they're vintage tackle fishing clubs where they choose to fish only with vintage equipment. That sounds like a lot of fun. All right, we'll just tighten this one up now. This has a scalloped edge. You want to align your scalloped edge with the hole so that you can put the screw tie down in. And this will be the last screw for the reel. So we took this reel completely apart. We showed you how it was made. Had a question about how that whole assembly is kind of tied on there, but we did show you that. And we gave you some hints about working on an old reel that is a collectible reel, what to kind of touch and not touch. And this one, well, we're ready to give it a turn with its newly straightened handle. And let's see how we did. So we are probably in, all right, we're in free spool, so let's make sure that this casts nicely. Well, that's a little tight, so you can back off the spool tensioner. And now look at that thing go. It's got a beautiful casting throw to it. And again, I believe that's not the original cork. I believe that's an accessory that was added to save line. And now let's give it that spin. Spins beautifully. Scott, you found yourself a nice one. This is the Penn Seaford pre-war, so the 1930s fishing reel. And now you've seen how to take it apart, service, and keep this one going for a long time to come. I hope you've all enjoyed that and learned from it. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. Your efforts truly are appreciated. To everyone, please keep your reels and rods ready to go. The fish bite is on. Make sure that you have them ready so that they don't fail you when your time is to get out on the water has come. To everybody, please enjoy your days of great weather of the summer and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.